You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in.
So last week we talked about the 5 different commodities that we actually spend before we start spending money. And how those commodities, like if we invest them into the wrong things, it's a whole lot like gambling, right? We make an investment back, but most likely it's just gone. However, when we invest with love, there's almost always a guarantee on our investment, right? So I wanted to go ahead and talk today about, how we invest these commodities is actually a metaphor for how we invest our money. And that's a big deal because I don't know a single person on this planet that doesn't want more of that, right? But again, we just don't recognize like how our languaging and how our thoughts and how these things actually tie into the way that we view, spend, or use money. So let me start off first and foremost with a story about one of my clients who we had kind of talked about this, and I helped her see how this was true in her own life. And I'm going to call my client Sarah. And Sarah had just a very difficult husband. Um, Her husband was demeaning. He was often not very nice. You could say that he was emotionally and verbally abusive. And Sarah was an absolute genius when it came to marketing and when it came to video entrepreneurship. Like, she had even written a book. Like, she was very, very gifted in business, very gifted. But yet she found herself constantly worrying about money. Um, to the point that one day, in an attempt to try to earn more money, she invested, or she felt like she had invested $70,000 into a a business that guaranteed her a massive return on her money, almost double what she invested, only to find out that it was a scam and that there was no way she was ever going to get that money back. Well, it took us a little bit of time, coaching back and forth. But one of the things I pointed out to her was her husband gaslighting her. And she even had a business partner too that would gaslight her. And how she would get angry at both her husband and her partner because of the gaslighting, and she tried to force them to admit that they were lying, even though like she could prove that they were lying. She really wanted them to be the ones to admit that they were lying, and they just wouldn't do it. And that really frustrated her. And so she would often fight, and to the point where she was exhausted. And after she was exhausted, she really didn't have the time or energy to put into the things that she was a genius at. because she had just spent it all in the fight. And I explained to her that her husband gaslighting her was a whole lot like a scam, like him trying to scam her out of these other 5 commodities, her time. The fighting took up a lot of time. Her talents, she had to get really creative to try to get her husband to admit that he was lying, and he never did. Her energy, well, how much energy does it take to actually fight for something? Her emotions were definitely wrapped up in this, and her focus was all on the prove it. Remember the prove it problem? She wanted to prove it to him. But the question was why? She was feeling all this anger and frustration, and she was frustrated with herself because she knew better than to fight, but yet she felt like she still needed to, and she just could not understand why she was allowing the scam to happen. Why would she feel like she had to invest these commodities into the gaslighting when she didn't want it? She didn't want to be gaslit. She didn't want to be treated this way in her marriage. She didn't want it, but yet here she was feeling like she was forced to invest all these precious commodities into this ick. She didn't want it, but yet she was buying it. And she recognized that a scam is a whole lot like being gaslit. It was a lie to get her to invest only to have no return on the investment. It left her broke. It left her feeling depleted and like there was no way out. And it isn't until she could see that she was using similar language in the way that she was dealing with her husband and the way that this scam had happened to her that she realized that maybe there was a thread of similarity, a thread between these two. And as she started diving deeper into her, like what was going on with her marriage, she realized that she actually did not want to continue the marriage with her husband. She was tired of always being the one to invest with no return. She felt like he would never be able to give her the things that she needed and wanted in a marital relationship. And she was tired of investing these things into this. But she did not want the consequences of that decision. She recognized how hard it would be to hire an attorney on her own, to go through the divorce process, possibly to have to share kids with a spouse that was less than kind to her. And also, she also knew how brutal her husband could be sometimes, and she was scared. And the idea of doing things by herself on her own was terrifying to her as well. And so she would invest these energies to see if there was any other possible way to keep her marriage going, just in a way where her husband would finally see her and hear her and stop trying to demand that she give him these things without any return on her investment. And as we got digging a little deeper, she also realized that she had a twinge of self-doubt that maybe her husband was right. Maybe she really was the problem. Maybe she couldn't trust herself. And so she would put her commodities into things that she really shouldn't have trusted in the first place. Right? Because there was still a smidgen of low self-trust. And because of that low self-trust, she was using her focus, her time, her talents, her energy, and her emotions and spending them in a way that left her feeling emotionally broke, mentally broke, energetically broke, and financially broke as well. In her case, the way that she was spending her energy was a metaphor for the way that she was spending her money. She would invest in the scam of the gaslighting that her husband put forth, as well as the scam that this company gaslit her into. And that's the problem, is when she realized that she didn't fully trust herself to be able to make these decisions and that she would be okay regardless of what happened or what needed to be done. When she realized that she actually would be, she was able to start taking action in the steps that she needed to take. And what was amazing too is she finally started having the energy to invest back into her business, creating more cash than what she lost in the original scam. And so this is the thing that I want you to understand. We often talk about being broke financially, right? Not having enough. But if you consider how you might feel emotionally and how you might feel mentally, spiritually, etc., you might also realize that there's some brokenness in those areas as well, those energetic areas. And so this is why it's very important to pay attention to the words that we are using when it comes to money. Are we using those same words when we're trying to describe our relationships as well? So if you remember the relational tears, and if you don't, go check out my other podcast, The Other Side of the Struggle, Healing from Betrayal Trauma, the Relational Tears. And I don't remember what episode it is. So there's 125 episodes in that podcast, and so you'll need to go maybe search for it a little bit, but listen to that podcast episode about the relational tears. But I'm also going to tell you that it's no coincidence that the others tier and the abundance tier are the two tiers that are not only the biggest, but also the ones that are right on top of the other. And it's because the language that we use in the abundance tier is also the language we use as we climb up the tiers. We might feel broken by our relationships. When I was coaching women through betrayal trauma, I can't tell you how often I heard, I feel like my husband has broke me. I feel like my husband has broke me. We might say something along the lines of, I feel like my business partner has broken me. I feel like I was broken by my parents. I feel like I was broken by my child, my husband, my mentor, all of these different relationships that we find ourselves in. It's something that I hear a lot. These people feel broken by this particular relationship. And it shows somewhere in their finances as well. Another thing we might say in money is there's not enough of it. Or we might also feel very, very scared, very worried, like we have to do something, like this bill is coming up and I have no idea how to pay it, right? Well, how often do we say, I have no idea how to connect to this person? I have no idea how to pay that or how to give what this person feels like they deserve. Or how often do we also say, like, they don't need it, or that it's too expensive, or like there's so many different things that we say when we're talking about a relationship, our relationship with money, I should say, that oftentimes we use those same terminologies and same phrases in the way that we view other people around us. But it doesn't just stop there. It's often a way that we view ourselves and a way that we view God or love. We might actually, somewhere down deep inside of us, wonder if true love really does exist. I mean, how often, I can't tell you how often I've heard from women that they can't trust men, right? Or even men that feel like they can't trust women. There's not enough out there. And oftentimes that comes to how they view God or love in and of itself. The kind of love that I need doesn't exist. That's often what we're told. But this is actually a trust issue that we're having with God because He knows exactly how to show up in the way that best fits us, to help us understand love in the way that fits us. And this is also something you see with people who are struggling with the abundance tier. They don't realize that money can be created the same way love can be created. It's already there, and it's ready for us to take advantage of it, to call it into our spaces, right? To use. But if we focus and we put our other commodities into the negative energy and we're throwing it at that kind of stuff, first, money responds to that. It has to by energetic law because your money is a symbol, a metaphor for how you are spending your energies first. It is a symbol for how you're viewing your relationships with yourself, with others, and with God. When we, however, say that I love to create money because I love how I can serve people, I love seeing their lives change. I love seeing them realize how they can make their lives better because they actually have resources on hand to create. But in order to understand how we can create, we first and foremost have to understand the things that we love, because creation comes easy when it's something we love to do. When it's something that lights us up, when it's something we're passionate about. And this is why passion is actually one of the things, one of the keys to unlocking your mission and purpose. Is because when you truly do understand the things that you love, you understand the things that you love to create. And when you understand the things you love to create, you understand like how you can serve the world. When you understand how you can serve the world, you understand what talents you were given, what time you were given, and how you can leverage your time. You understand like what you need to focus on. And all of a sudden, your energy shifts, and now you are into the cycle of creation and abundance. You are investing these things naturally into the things that actually give you a return on your investment. I want you to think about one of your favorite teachers. And I remember mine to be Mrs. Mary Ellen Elmer. She was one of my favorite high school teachers, and she was my math teacher. And I remember Mrs. Elmer being a game changer for me because the teachers I had had up to the point of her, I felt like they were trying to teach me, but I just wasn't good at math. It was something wrong with me. And so I felt like I was bad at math. I was bad at math. I was bad at math. But she loved it so much, and she had such a passion for it that it was impossible to not have a passion for it myself when I was in her class. Math became easy because it was something she loved. And that's something I've carried with me. You know, I went to school, to college actually to become an elementary teacher myself. And that was one of the things that I really, really focused on was how math worked because I had turned out to love it. And because I loved it, I was able to explain it in a way to kids that made sense to them. So because of Mrs. Elmer and her passion, it ignited my passion for it, which in turn ignited many, many, many children through me, blessing their lives because they realized they're actually good at something they thought was really hard. They're really good at it. The same thing happens to us with our energetic investments. When we light up in passion, it immediately sends out a passionate ripple from us, attracting the right people into our lives because they get excited about the same things. And they're willing to invest in the things that they love too because they see it inside of you. And this is what causes them to invest in you. But you first and foremost must understand who you truly are. This is why boundaries are so important. If you think about the 7 pillars, right? I know I talk about sevens a lot, and 7 is also a biblical and energetic number. So I would definitely tell you to go check out the number 7 here, okay? And how that plays into the universe. That's homework. You can take it, you can run with it. But one of my 7 pillars is the bounce forward. And in the bounce forward, it's all about knowing yourself, knowing who you are, knowing your contribution to this world. Because if you can understand that, you can also understand your boundaries. Your boundaries are basically what make you up as a person. And these are the things, and you love who you are so much, all the pieces of you, the good and the bad. You love that person so much that you refuse to operate outside of who you are. So nothing will entice you to invest your energetic commodities into something that's not going to give you a return on that investment. This is also why the money boundary is the last boundary. It is because that is also such a result boundary. And how you operate within each one of the different types of boundary categories also says a lot about your bounce forward, who you are. How do you operate within the listening boundary? How do you operate within the talking boundary? How do you operate within your physical, sexual, energetic, time, and money boundaries? It speaks to who you are and the person that you are proud of being. And when you understand that, you are in creation energy. So consider the emotion and how it's there to get your attention. But if you realize that the emotions that you're feeling are there to get your attention, you also can start to understand the boundaries you need to set and how to stop investing your emotional commodities and your energetic commodities into the things that aren't going to give you a return. You can instead check into the emotion, identify what the emotion is, and ask yourself, okay, what is it trying to get me to pay attention to? When you sit with the emotion, again, like I said, do it for 90 seconds, and then you just get curious, right? About why it was there. You can start to understand why it was showing up for you in the first place. So, talking about Sarah again, she was realizing that she was feeling a lot of anger and a lot of frustration, and rightfully so. I mean, anybody that's being gaslit and being in a marriage where they're not being respected, it's a very frustrating and angry type of situation. But as I encouraged her to really talk about how she thought about the situation, I started pulling out keywords and phrases that she was saying. And some of those things were, I'm tired of living like this. I'm tired of the way he treats me. I'm tired of, I'm ready to leave, but what about this? Right? And I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can. And that was one thing she kept saying a lot was, I don't know if I can. And so I asked her, is it possible, even though we've done a lot of this work and a lot of this boundary work, and you're starting to understand who you are, that you still don't trust yourself enough to be single? That you don't know if you can actually handle the consequences of leaving the marriage? And when I said that, you could see her start to well up with tears, that it really hit an emotional point, that pain point. And so we again started to take a look at how she could have her own back. We started to set the boundary of, I've got my back. I can be my own best friend, that I can be with me through hard times, that I am never alone. I'm never alone with me, and I'm never alone with God. That I can make it through with both of them by my side. And it was then that she started taking action towards the things that she knew she needed to do in order for her to create the life that she wanted. And that gave her peace, confidence to create, and a way to move forward. And what was amazing was the next time that she put this boundary into place, like her husband started gaslighting her and blaming her and yelling at her, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, she realized that there was no desire and no need to fight. And she would just simply say that, yeah, I'm not going to get involved with this. I'm not buying this. And that was her boundary. Legitimately, I'm just not buying this. Well, it's true. Okay. You can believe that. I'm not buying it. And she was literally saying was, I am not spending my precious commodities on the story you're weaving or the energy that you're throwing at me, or I'm not buying this anymore. I'm not buying into it. And all of a sudden, she had a consistent peace. The trigger had been diffused because she felt like she had to fight for every single way that maybe she could still make this marriage work. When in reality, it was time for her husband to step up if he was going to. And if not, it was time for her to step up for her. And this gave her the peace to actually invest those commodities into her mission, her purpose, and the way that she loved showing up in life instead. She began to glow, she began to shine, and that turned into a cash deposit. So, my loves, this is why leaning into our emotions and really listening to them is so important, because it really gives us an accounting to where we're spending our energy. And where we're spending our energetic commodities often is a metaphor for how we're spending our money, or not attracting it, or not bringing it into our lives. So if we want more, and if we want to create more in our business, we must first and foremost ask ourselves, where do we need to grow if we want our money to grow as well? All right, my loves, I hope this is helpful for you. Again, don't forget to share this podcast. If you're finding it helpful, share it with your other Lady Boss friends. If you have questions in and of yourself, feel free to text the show. And until next week, I'll see you next time. Bye, my loves.
All right, Boundary Boss babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other boss babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the send us a text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, boss babes.